Welcome to Thinking Deeper by 6-7. Today we're taking one of the oldest stories of murder, the story of Cain and Abel. And we're not going to treat it like some dusty old myth. Instead, we're going to look at it as a deep, profound psychological case study. This ancient text, believe it or not, reveals timeless truths about our own anger, our own responsibility, and it forces us to ask some really tough questions about the nature of God, what divine wrath actually is, and the choices we all face every single day.
So let's start with a huge question. What is the real root of human conflict? Is it about money, politics, land, or is it something way deeper, something that starts right inside of us? The story of Cain and Abel, it suggests the answer is definitely within. This isn't just a simple story. It's a roadmap that shows us the internal gears that can grind a person from simple disappointment all the way to absolute devastation.
Okay, so here's our game plan for unpacking this. We're going to break it down into 5 key parts. First, we'll tackle a huge misunderstanding about Cain's sacrifice. Then, we'll dissect the psychology of Cain's anger, what was really going on inside his head. After that, we'll look at the divine intervention that tried to pull him back from the brink, connect all that to a timeless solution for conflict, and finally, we'll zoom out and see what this story tells us about love, wrath, and the choices we all have to make.
All right, first up, a misunderstood sacrifice. Now, a lot of people think they know this part. The popular idea is that God rejected Cain's offering because, he brought some vegetables while his brother Abel brought a lamb. But is that really what the text says is going on? Let's look closer.
This is absolutely crucial. The source text makes it super clear. It says God was not pleased with Cain the man, and then it mentions his offering. See the difference? The problem wasn't the gift, the problem was the giver. God's rejection was aimed at Cain's character, his internal state, not his choice of crops.
And this brings us to a really important idea about how we read things. On one hand, you have exegesis. That's when you draw the meaning out of a text, based on what's actually there. On the other hand, there's eisegesis, and that's when you force your own outside ideas into the text. The whole wrong type of sacrifice theory, that's a textbook case of eisegesis. It's an assumption we read into the story that just isn't there.
So, let's move on to our second section because this is where it gets really interesting. The anatomy of anger. If the problem was Cain himself, then his reaction to being rejected becomes the absolute heart of the story. You can almost look at it like a psychological diagnosis of a man who suddenly feels, completely unacceptable.
And what we see is this tragic 4-step path to violence. It all starts with step 1, rejection. Cain feels he's been judged as unacceptable. In step 2, that feeling turns toxic. It becomes a mix of anger and depression. And then comes the really critical psychological move in step 3, transference. He can't face his own failure, so he projects all of that rage onto his successful brother Abel. And finally, in step 4, that internal pressure just explodes into the external act of murder.
So what exactly is transference? Well, counselors and psychologists also call it projection. It's exactly what Cain does. The real source of his rage is himself, his own failure, his own feeling of being unacceptable. But that's just too painful to look at. So Abel, who did nothing wrong, becomes a convenient target for an anger that really should have been pointed inward.
Now for our third section, a divine intervention. And what's so fascinating here is that God's response isn't what you might expect. It's not this immediate bolt of lightning. Instead, it's a teaching moment. It's an attempt to get Cain to look in the mirror by asking some incredibly direct questions.
And the first question is so simple but so deep. Why are you angry? Just think about that. This isn't just a question for Cain, right? It's a question for every single one of us. It's a prompt to stop pointing fingers, to stop blaming other people or our circumstances, and to actually identify the true internal source of what we're feeling.
And then comes this warning, which just brilliantly gets to the heart of it. God tells Cain that this destructive impulse, this sin, is right there, crouching at the door. It wants to take him over, but, and this is key, he has the power to master it. It's an incredible statement about personal responsibility and choice. By the way, if you're finding this deep dive valuable, please take a moment to subscribe and press the like button to support our channel. It really helps us out.
Of course, Cain ignores the warning. He rejects that chance for self-reflection and commits the murder. And then God comes back with another haunting question. Where is your brother? Notice the shift? The focus goes from internal accountability, basically where are you at, to external responsibility. It's one last chance for Cain to take ownership, a chance he tragically throws away.
Okay, this all leads us to our fourth section, which actually points to a solution for this whole destructive cycle. We'll call it the log in your eye. This ancient problem has a just as ancient solution, one that was spelled out thousands of years later in a very famous teaching.
And there it is, this famous quote from Matthew. It gets to the absolute core of the issue. This is the exact same principle God was offering to Cain, just said a different way. The solution to conflict with other people always begins by resolving the conflict inside yourself. You've got to solve your own problem first.
Now, people misunderstand this all the time. They think the command is simply, judge not, don't ever evaluate anyone. But that's not the message at all. The real message is, stop being a hypocrite. The goal isn't to avoid judgment entirely, it's to only approach others after you've done a really rigorous, really honest self-assessment. Judge yourself first.
All right, let's zoom out for our final section and see how all these pieces fit together. This is about love, wrath, and choice. Because this story, it doesn't just diagnose human conflict, it also makes some really profound and honestly challenging claims about the character of God and the fundamental choice that all of us have to make.
The source material presents this really thought-provoking comparison. On one side, you have a God with a capacity for creation and love. On the other side, a capacity for wrath. Now, we usually think of these as opposites. But the argument here is that divine wrath isn't the opposite of love. It's the fierce protector of love. It's that powerful, defensive reaction that only happens because of love against anything that threatens to destroy what is loved.
And this slide really gives us a tight, concise definition from the source. The wrath of God is reframed. It's not petty human anger. It's not a tantrum. It's the powerful, almost cleansing reaction of a creator who sees his beloved creation being corrupted and destroyed. It directly ties love and wrath together as two sides of the very same coin.
So in the end, the entire story, all this psychology, all this theology, it boils down to the two simple paths you see on this slide. This was the choice given to Cain. He could do what is right, work on himself, face his flaws, and become an acceptable person. Or he could take the easier path, transfer his anger, project his failings, and blame somebody else.
And that brings us right to the end. Because this isn't just Cain's story, is it? It's a universal human story. When we're faced with our own failures, with our own feelings of being unacceptable, every single one of us stands at the exact same crossroads he did. The story just lays out the options for us, and it asks a question that's been echoing through time ever since. Cain was offered a choice. What will you choose?